Hey, what's up and welcome back to Interpreting the Stars, where today I have a brand new film to talk about coming out this Friday, April 29th on Tubi TV as part of their brand new Tubi original thing that they've been rolling out. It's an adaptation of a graphic novel by the same name. This is Corrective Measures. Corrective Measures is all about a penitentiary, specifically built for superpowered criminals, aka supervillains, headed up by a twisted and dirty warden played by Michael Rooker. He has his own agenda that's always at play, but the game changes when one of the most dangerous supervillains, who can control the mind, played by Bruce Willis, shows up at the prison. Addressing the elephant in the room, this is one of Bruce Willis's final roles following his retirement and incredibly sad medical condition, aphasia. You can tell while watching that his scenes specifically were incredibly short. I mean, everybody around him will have all these different monologues, if you will. Then it'll cut to Bruce Willis, and he'll say like 3 words max. And then it'll cut to somebody else, they'll say a bunch of words. It'll cut back to Bruce Willis, and he'll say like 3 or 4 more words max. It's sad because we all know that he is a great, iconic actor. I mean, I wish that he was given more to do in this film, but for the most part, he kind of just sits in a prison cell looking at a wall, saying nothing, expressionless, basically the whole time. It's partially how his character was written, which is like laid back, just doesn't really care about anything. But you know while watching that the character might have been written around Bruce Willis and what he's able to contribute. Because his name on a poster sells. Even if people don't expect much out of the movies anymore, it is Bruce Willis. And you can't take that away. Other than that, I will say before watching the film, I checked out the graphic novel that it's based on from the library. I didn't get around to finishing it, but I did like the concept of a prison full of supervillains. Now that's something that we've seen before in like Arkham Asylum, Suicide Squad, etc. You might even get Suicide Squad vibes from the film as a whole, especially when it comes down to the music choices and the attitudes of some of the inmates. Casting also, not terrible. I mean, 3 of the main characters were played by those that are already familiar with comic book / superpowered worlds. I mean, you got Bruce Willis, who played in Unbreakable. You got Tom Cavanaugh, who plays a bunch of different characters on the CW's version of The Flash. You have Michael Rooker, aka Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, at the heart of the casting, it was kind of smart, but it's also a fairly flawed film too. The biggest issue that I had with the film came down to the writing. Now, what I mean by that was there seemed to be a lack of point or plot, really. When we ask, what's going on in the movie? What's it about? Who is the main character? Who is the main villain? You know, what are they trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? All of that. I came up empty. I don't know who the main character is supposed to be. I don't know what the plot's about. It's a collection of interesting characters in an interesting setting, and that's basically it. I mean, they're all doing different stuff. They all have different ideals. They are all affected and influenced by a variety of different aspects, and in that way, it is kind of sloppily written. I personally really liked some of the characters, though, and how they were portrayed, especially with Tom Cavanaugh's character. This man never gets as much recognition as he deserves. I mean, he can pretty much play any character and do it really well, and he does. I won't give away what his character was all about in this film because he was my favorite, but if anybody is worth watching this film, in my opinion, it was him. Visually, I think that the visuals were done okay. I think that the film would have looked a little bit better and more in tone with the graphic novel if there was sort of a grungy overtone or filter to the film. The visual effects themselves against what feels like an almost auto white balance situation doesn't quite pop out as much as it could have. The editing. Now that was pretty good. I mean, there's a slight flavor of martial arts in the film that was actually done pretty well. And more than that, edited it together pretty well. So I will give props to the editor for Corrective Measures. For a lower budgeted action film, you know, it is not bad. The casting of the film will definitely draw a few people in. But don't expect some kind of blockbuster because of the names that you see in the credits. A lot of the biggest names in this film don't do a ton. I mean, even Michael Rooker, who probably has the most lines out of anybody in the film, a lot of times he's literally just sitting behind a desk watching stuff unfold on the computer in front of him. That kind of gives off the impression that Rooker wasn't actually there on set and simply sent in footage of him reacting. And that's not exactly the case, it seemed like it at times. So let's go ahead and break down my final score. So from a purely technical perspective, this film follows a pretty normal, by-the-book format for telling a story found in a much more grounded film. What I mean by that is this is a superpower type of narrative. which typically calls for stronger use of effects, visuals, cinematography, writing, all of that. And I felt as if this was missing a giant piece of the jigsaw puzzle that it probably needed to properly call itself an adaptation. I feel with adequate visuals, effects, lighting, color, and even writing, this could be a groundbreaking type of film. But because it's kind of missing some or all of that, it's really towing the line of almost being called a fan film. So this unbiased score is 48%. My bias score is a little bit higher since at the end of the day, I did find it interesting. It's pretty cool, but also sad to see Bruce Willis in one of his final roles. The concept of a supervillain prison is always great. Some of the characters are the best part of the film in general, but it's not really going anywhere. There's no real plot. There's no real main character. And because of that, it's hard to hone in or care about any specific person. And I think that hurt it the most. So my bias score is 64%. Combining those two scores together, 48 and 64, we wind up with my final score for Corrective Measures, 56%. 56 out of 100 possible stars, or for me, that's a letter grade of C- on my letter grading spreadsheet. Guys, have you seen Corrective Measures yet? And if you have, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments down below. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come up with the next review. Until then, peace out.